At Rome Fiumicino Leonardo da Vinci Airport, travelers are greeted by an amazing experience, as a trip through art and beauty turns the wait for their planes into an opportunity for discovery. Aeroporti di Roma has been welcoming culture and art for years, displaying works that have gradually transformed every corner of the airport into visionary spaces dedicated to expression and stories. Here, art is more than just a detail. It is an invitation to wander and rediscover the deep link between past and present, explore the connection between the great Italian artistic heritage and newer forms of expression. Where do these works take us? What worlds do they reveal? This is Orizzonte, a podcast series developed by Cora Media for Aeroporti di Roma. Once you have seen Leonardo, you can no longer think of making much progress. This is what artist Paul Klee wrote in his diaries at the end of the 1800s. Over a century later, every artist today would have to agree. How can anyone hope to live up to the genius of Leonardo da Vinci? The airport of Rome Fiumicino, which bears his name, took on this challenge. In 2019, it decided to celebrate the 500-year anniversary of Da Vinci's death with a competition, Leonardo and the Journey, Beyond the Boundaries of Man and Space. Artists were called to be inspired by the creative process of Leonardo and to sculpt a statue with the sole prerogative that it had to use white marble from the Apuan Alps. Out of 60 participants, 6 of them were chosen and given the chance to develop their pieces, which are now exhibited both in the boarding area E of Rome Fiumicino Airport and at Ciampino Airport. The result is astounding. Although the sculptures are very different from one another, as the artists themselves have different backgrounds, styles, and ages, taken as a collective work, they instill the feeling of a common origin. The 6 artists were all inspired by Da Vinci's stronger themes, such as movement, humanity's tension towards new goals, overcoming barriers while traveling, and studies in anatomy. We spoke with a few of them and asked them to tell us about their experience. Alda Marina Iacoianni told us that her sculpture, Tempo, carved out of Carrara white marble, represents the idea of travel as a constant flow. Inspired by the words of Leonardo da Vinci, "In rivers, the water that you touch is the last of what has passed and the first of that which comes. So, with present time." According to the artist, every departure is a transformation. Every arrival is a new beginning. Alda Marina Iacoianni sculpted Tempo by reducing a block of marble from 14 to 2 tons. Just like traveling molds those who experience it. Eternal and immobile marble describes the tension between stasis and movement, between the past and the future. Whereas the work of Alda Marina Iacoianni is inspired by the idea of time as a large bubble ready to burst, Marco Bagnoli, for his Come figura d'arciere, takes cue from an illustration by Leonardo, which can be found at the Louvre Museum. A nude observed from behind, as the main figure appears to draw an invisible bow. Marco Bagnoli thus decided to sculpt a human figure in movement, stretching upwards in the act of releasing a symbolic arrow. Being a Frog by Diego Perrone is also inspired by the idea of movement. As the artist explained to us, the idea for the sculpture came from the dynamic of a leaping frog. First, we see the contour lines at the moment when the frog is curled up in a state of propulsive stillness. Then, as it begins to leap, and finally with its feet almost completely off the ground. According to the artist, nature seemingly designed the frog for jumping. Its entire body is purposed to the mechanics of this movement. On the other hand, the sculpture is made of marble, which is a decisively inelastic material, more given for monuments, and which carries its own visual weight. This contrast creates the idea that lightness and the upward thrust in the air can overcome gravity itself. Should you find yourselves at the Giovan Battista Pastine Airport in Ciampino, make sure not to miss The Flock by Silvia Scaringella, a sculpture inspired by Leonardo's bird machines. It depicts a flock of aircraft birds, outlining perspectives and the intersections of lives, conveying an idea of freedom of movement and of thought. As the artist tells us, the sculpture disassembles into the individual parts of a whole and then comes back together graphically as trajectories, which symbolize the mutual attraction between masses and the dynamic tension we have towards new horizons. In Untitled, Monument to Time, Air, the artist Sam Falls celebrates Leonardo in a game of contrasts. In his work, we can see a natural material such as marble blended together with metal, which represents progress and technology, coexisting in both conflict and mutual support. Sam Falls, in his sculpture, shows us a metal body with inserted marble wings, a combination of nature and artifice, organic material and abstraction, which brings to mind the theme of travel, but most importantly, that of flight. Humanity has marveled at the concept of flight for thousands of years. Despite all our modern scientific knowledge, we still gape in awe at a plane gliding way above our towns. We think back at how Leonardo observed the flight of birds in an attempt to create flying machines. As we know from the writings of the architect Giorgio Vasari in 1568, Leonardo couldn't stand seeing birds trapped in a cage, and whenever he could, he would let them free to fly away into the sky. And perhaps this is the same desire for freedom that pushes us today to break down barriers, explore new worlds, and fly. Orizzonte is a podcast series by Cora Media in collaboration with Aeroporti di Roma. Written by Rosella Bettinardi, narrated and adapted by John Vincent Aquilecchia. Editing by Sara Poma. Sound design by Lucrezia Marcelli. Graphic design by Rebecca Grassi. The project manager is Anna Nenna. The producer is Sabrina Patilli. The post-production coordinator is Matteo Scelsa. Studio recordings by Luca Possi.